Welcome to With the First Pick, the CBS Sports NFL Draft Podcast here on CBS Sports Network. I'm Ryan Wilson, and that handsome devil's Rick Spielman. Shiny teeth and new hairdo. Our general manager with more than 30 years of NFL experience. On today's show, I'm going to rank the rookie first-round quarterback performances from week 2 of the preseason. Then we'll give you our 5 favorite college players to keep an eye on this fall. We'll finish things up with a peek at my top 50 big board, which includes 8, Rick, quarterbacks. And I'm sure you'll have some thoughts on that. But first, Rick, like we always do, tell everyone how many days until the 2025 NFL Draft.
Well, Ryan, I cannot see the full screen, so I'm going to say 24 days until the 2025 NFL Draft. So we got a lot of work to do. And after seeing your top 50 and the original that came out, we've got a lot of work to do these next 24 days.
Man, we fell asleep and woke up with 24 days to go.
How much is it? Yeah,
it's
how many days do we actually have?
We have 247 days. There it is. There's the one shot for Grandpa Rick. But you can read it. You want to give us the whole take? Go ahead.
Yeah. Ryan Wilson, do you know that there are 247 days left until the 2025 NFL Draft?
All right, you can take a deep breath. Not 24 days. We got a little extra time, so we can work through some things here. All right. By the way, you can help us out.
Cut the show short just because we only have 24 days left to get this and your 50 and everything else corrected. A lot of time.
Yeah, we missed the combine. We missed the pro days. Luckily, we got a little time, Rick.
East, West.
Everything. In the meantime, you can help us out. Keep the lights on here by subscribing to With the First Pick on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Rick, let's get to it. People come here to hear your smart takes on things and look at my handsome face. So we're going to double up and kill 2 birds with one stone. All right, so you and I, we each separately ranked how the rookie first-round QBs performed last weekend. We put the numbers into the old adding machine, and it spit out the official With the First Pick rookie quarterback power rankings. You can see those here. At the top, Caleb Williams. Number 2, Bo Nix. And I have some thoughts about this. And I should note, our buddy Mike Renner couldn't join us today, but he did give us his rankings for the quarterbacks as well. And you and Mike helped bumped up Bo Nix's status here in this graphic. Number 3, Drake May. They finally let him play, and he played really well. And then Jaden Daniels is number 4. And it's a pretty good list when Jaden Daniels is number 4. 2 names you won't note here. J.J. McCarthy, of course, he's battling from returning from the knee surgery he had. His season's done, unfortunately. And then, of course, Michael Penix Jr., the number 8 overall pick for the Atlanta Falcons. Played in week 1 of the preseason, didn't play in week 2. So before we get going on the actual list there, Rick, I wanted to ask you as a former GM, how do you make sense of the Falcons' decision not to play Michael Penix Jr. in week 2? And Raheem Morris said, the head coach, he's not playing in preseason week 3 either.
Yeah, I don't know, because he's not going to be the starting quarterback. And maybe it spooked him when J.J. McCarthy went down and Minnesota lost to him to a season-ending knee injury. But I don't understand it, because it's an opportunity for him to play in some preseason games. Now, I understand they've had some combined practices. I'm sure he got a lot of reps, especially with Kirk Cousins not being able to go full go with the Achilles. But I would say any rookie quarterback, if they get an opportunity to go out there and compete in the preseason, give them that opportunity, because after this 3rd preseason game, guess what? You're not getting first team reps, maybe 2 during practice per each period. More than likely, you're just going to be running scout team cards. So put him out there, let him continue to grow and learn. He did a lot of positive things when you broke down the first week of the preseason, but there are also a lot of things that he does need to work on, the footwork, the getting the ball out on time, especially coming off a play action pass. So I think it would have benefited him as he moves forward in his career as far as development goes by him being able to play.
Right, and you see the graphic there if you're watching us on CBS Sports Network, that how productive he was at Washington. And he's also older. He's 24 years old. He's not like J.J. McCarthy or Drake May at 21 years old. But there's no substitute for reps, especially in the preseason when, like you said, Rick, you're not going to get those reps during the regular season unless, God forbid, someone gets hurt. Related to that, and we talked about this a lot last season with the 2023 rookie class, Bryce Young, year 2 in Carolina, new coach, new GM. He hasn't played a snap in the preseason, and Dave Canales, the new head coach, said he's not going to play a snap. For someone coming off as tough a year as that was rookie-wise for him, maybe he needs the snaps more than Michael Penix Jr., it feels like.
Yeah, to me, that's a little bit of a head scratcher. I totally do not understand that. Why wouldn't you? I mean, you're watching preseason, you're seeing Patrick Mahomes out there, you're seeing Joe Burrow in the first week, you're seeing Josh Allen, guys that really don't have to play, yet they're out there playing, getting tuned up and ready to go for the regular season. You can have these combined practices. I know you're putting in a new offense, but even in the preseason, to get out there and actual get game experience, just to feel that, hey, now this is live. I'm going to get hit. I have to get the ball out on time. You have a new coach communicating to you through the helmet, just relaying plays and how all the game day operations go, especially with a new head coach, with a new offense. For them not to put Bryce Young out there in a preseason, I just don't understand what the reasoning is. They say that he's ready to go, but out of any of these young guys, we saw Will Levis play in the preseason. Any of these young guys, we C.J. Stroud played this preseason. Why wouldn't Bryce Young play? And he may be the one that needs it the most.
And Rick, you actually asked Bryce about this at the combine when he didn't take part in the drills of the combine, and you said this. I've heard you say this probably 4 million times. If I roll the ball out, I want to see if you want to compete. Now, Bryce may want to play, so it's not his call, but at the end of the day,
Right.
the points are the reps and getting better. All right, so that's a look back. Let's take a look forward here. Let's look at the rankings, how we had these guys ranked. Week 2 of the preseason, the rookie class. Number 1, no surprise, Caleb Williams. We don't have to spend a lot of time on Caleb because I want to get to Bo Nix. But started slow. They went 3 and out on the first 3 series. And then Caleb said, oh, I forgot who I am. Let me take over and start slinging it. And Rick, we talked this to death last fall. The off-platform plays, the arm strength, the ability to avoid pressure, all those things add up. And he's doing it now. And again, it's only preseason without the concerns with the turnovers, which is what we saw last year. Do you feel better, worse, the same about Caleb and what we've seen in 2 weeks?
Yeah, no, I think the arrow's going up on him. And I think because I believe that was the first game he played actually at home in front of the Chicago fan base. So I imagine the nerves were a little jumpy at the beginning of the game. But once he got in rhythm and he figured out, hey, this is just ball, something I've done my whole life. Let me go out and do what I do. And then all of a sudden you see the roll to the left and the incredible cross body throw down the field to Rome Odunze. When he rolled to the right, and even though Odunze was out of back of the end zone, but how he made that linebacker freeze. He just looked like a deer in headlights and rolled around him, made that throw, the scramble, going to the right, into the left, and then walking into the end zone. He has, out of any of these guys, and I think all these rookies have played very well in the preseason, better than any rookie class I can remember playing so well in the preseason. But he just has a unique ability to make off-schedule type throws. Now, first week of the season, I imagine whatever defensive coordinator is going to face him, they're going to want to keep him in the pocket and make him become a pocket passer, because if you don't, this guy is going to light it up the scoreboard by his ability to make all these off-schedule and unique plays that a lot of quarterbacks, except maybe a Patrick Mahomes, can't make that Caleb can.
And a Spencer Rattler, but that's okay. I want to ask you quickly on the Rome Odunze, almost touchdown in the back of the end zone. And this is a quick answer from you, Rick. As general manager, are you marching down to the field and telling the grounds crew to paint in the end line? Because I thought maybe that Rome got confused about the end line.
Just put your feet in bounds. I don't care. I mean, it's not that hard, right? There's a white line. Both feet in pro have to be in bounds. Figure it out.
All right. We're not going to overthink that one. All right. Let's talk about Bo Nix. Speaking of overthinking things. And look, you made a good point. All these quarterbacks are playing above the line and at the level where they should almost all be starters. Drake May is a conversation we can have. But in terms of Bo Nix being 2 on this list, I had him last on my personal rankings among all the quarterbacks, even though I thought he played at a high level. But in terms of pushing the ball down the field, he had the fewest air yards of any of the quarterbacks we talked about here. So I thought he did a lot of checkdowns. He had a lot of simple throws down the field. Why is he number 2 on your list?
Because I thought this week he was more aggressive, even though there wasn't as many as some of the other quarterbacks. He was pushing the ball down the field more than he did in the first game. Now, he doesn't call the plays. Sean Payton's calling the plays, but when he had the opportunity to push it down the field, he did. And I thought he was accurate and on time with the ball when he did push it downfield. He is a very good fit, and we called it Sean Payton's arrogant pick that he's going to make Bo Nix be the next Drew Brees. And right now, it looks like he may be with his accuracy, how he's manipulating in the pocket. He looks calm and poised. He looks like he understands the scheme. And his accuracy is as good as anyone else that we talked about in this draft class.
Yep.
So I was when you watched it, Ryan, and I'm just sitting there, this looks easy right now. And I know it's going to change in the preseason, but I'm not gasping for air. It's painful to watch. It's actually a very smooth operation. Now, if we want to talk about your Pittsburgh Steelers, I know that's for another segment. We're not going to talk about that today. But Bo Nix makes this offense go, and he looks very smooth doing it.
Yeah, you're not going to get any pushback. And just because I had him ranked 4th on my list doesn't mean he didn't play well. I thought he did. And he and Jaden Daniels had similar type games in that they weren't asked to do a lot, and they made very few mistakes. That said, you had Jaden Daniels ahead of Drake May, and I was actually really surprised at how much they let Drake May do and how well he did it, even though some of his receivers refused to catch passes. So explain to me why you had Jaden, who had a nice afternoon, above Drake May.
Because I'm being influenced by what I saw in the Commanders and Dolphins combined practice. So I saw him operate in the red zone, and he threw 5 touchdowns against a pretty good Miami defense against their number ones. And his fluidity in the pocket, his athleticism, the way the ball comes out of his hands, it's like silky smooth. And the velocity he puts on the ball, I thought I saw it watching tape, but when you actually see it live, and we saw some of that, Ryan, when we were down there at their pro day last spring at LSU, this kid's going to be special. And everything, I'm combining what I've seen in the preseason. I actually had dinner with some of the Commanders' front office the night before, talked to them about how Jaden's progressing. And the other thing was, I think that if he continues to go the way he goes, and with Cliff Kingsbury lets him off the leash and let him start running and doing the things, that he's going to be the lead candidate for me. This is a bold prediction as Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Well, I'm going to follow up and ask you, can you imagine?
And you can keep him 4th on your list. And go ahead, keep him 4th on your list. That's fine. I'll sleep fine tonight.
Well, I'm gonna call you out right here. Can you imagine in any world where someone would not have Jaden Daniels as their quarterback 2 heading into the draft?
Yeah, no, not at all. I don't know what you're talking about.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. And by the way, we did the LSU Pro Day right before the UNC Pro Day, and you had said Jaden was number 2, but you wanted to see Drake. So maybe we should have the LSU Pro Day last, and we would have all been on the same page. But to your point, great job, everybody. All right, when we come back, we're going to turn our attention to college. And we'll take a look at 5 players Rick cannot wait to see this fall right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick here on CBS Sports Network. Quick note, if you're watching or listening, Rick, Mike Renner, and myself, we did a month's worth of summer scouting podcast previewing the college players you should know at every position. So if you like this, you'll love that, and you can check that out wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Rick, for the audio listeners, I'll quickly read the 5 players you're excited to see this fall, and then we'll get into it. Number 1 on your list, and you can tell whether this is random order or not, Mason Graham, defensive lineman out of Michigan, and then his teammate, Colston Loveland, the tight end, quarterback Connor Wegman out of Texas A&M, Danny Stutzman, the linebacker out of Oklahoma, and cornerback Denzel Burke out of Ohio State. We limited you to just one Ohio State player, and you went with Denzel Burke. I love it. But let's start with the quarterback position, and Connor Wegman only played 4 games last year because of a foot injury, but the expectations are high on him, and there's a lot of buzz about him as potentially making his way into round 1.
Yeah, when I watched him in those 4 games, and I understand the competition level he was playing against, but he did play against Miami of Florida, and I was very impressed with this kid's arm. He has a little bit of an awkward release, but the ball comes out. He is a good athlete. The one thing that really impressed me the most is when he was getting hit, the ball was on time and it was accurate, knowing that he was going to get hit in the pocket. So only saw 4 games, a small sample size, but I think this kid, if he shows what he's shown in those first 4 games against the competitions he's going to have to face this year, this kid is going to be a kid that can really rise up the draft boards. You know who my comp was and who I kind of thought he looked like to me a little bit? Will Levis. And I know Will Levis looks like an action figure, but I think this kid is well built as well. And he has the same type of arm talent that Will Levis has. I think this kid may have a little better touch than Will Levis had coming out.
He's incredibly tough. We know that. But just to be clear, you think he has Will Levis type arm talent?
Yes.
He's a baseball player too, so he has that background. All right. I know you like hypotheticals, and we do the dollar bets here. First round pick
God,
when it's all said and done.
Oh, yeah. I'll put, by the time it's said and done, if he stays healthy, I'll put a dollar bet on it that he ends up in the top 15.
Oh, wow. All right. You double down there. Not top 32, top 15. I love it. All right. Let's talk about the first name we mentioned, because
Are you
this
taking
young
that
man.
Bet? Did you take it or not take it? I don't know what you did.
I took it.
Confirmed.
I took it. Confirmed.
Okay.
Check mark.
Okay. So you'll say below 15. He'll drop below top 15. Okay.
I hope he goes first overall, but just for the purposes of me winning 100 pennies, yes. All right, let's talk about Mason Graham. He's not sneaking up on anybody because he's special. What are you making the face about? Don't you agree?
No, I'm just telling you. I'll tell you a quick story. I was traveling up to Detroit. I was going to cover the Lions training camp, and I ran into a couple scouts in the airline lounge that I belonged to, and they had just gotten back from visiting the University of Michigan, and they were walking through that airline club with their jaws down to the floor. I said, what'd you guys see? Did you see a ghost or something? They said, this kid is built as well as any defensive tackle, is built as athletic as any defensive tackle I remember coming out, can play the run as effectively as he can rush the passer. But the one thing that he has, and I'm trying to say, my comparison to him was Quinion Williams when he came out. But Jalen Carter now, when he played, there was no one who can block him at college. I think this kid, because of his grit, probably plays harder down in and down out than Jalen Carter did. If I had the choice between the two, I may take this kid over Jalen Carter.
And Jalen fell to 9, if I recall correctly, because of the off-field stuff. He had to leave the combine because of the troubles he had. And to your point, there were questions about his motor play in and play out. So Mason Graham, if I'm doing the math correctly, sounds like you think he's a top 5 guy?
Oh, no doubt. I'll put $20 on that one.
Oh, my gosh. Just for people that aren't aware, Rick, good luck getting a nickel out of Rick's hand. So if he says $20, you can take it to the bank. All right. That was an easy one. You were making faces, so I thought you were going to go the other direction when we started talking about Mason Graham. I'll let you choose. Who do you want to talk about next? What other guy caught your fancy there?
Well, we can go with Colston Loveland.
Let's go this teammate.
Because I think, on the offensive side of the ball, again, the scouts that I talked to that were going through the airline club that I was at, they had their jaws to the floor on this kid as well. He's lean, but to me, he reminded me a lot of Kincaid when Kincaid came out of Utah. Dominant as a mismatch in the passing game. Excellent athlete, great hands. He does need to get stronger as a blocker. Not as talented maybe as Brock Bowers was last year, but I think he's only, nipping at his heels on how talented this kid is. Now, I don't know who the quarterback's going to be and how much he's going to be involved in the offense, if anyone can get him the ball. But this kid is going to be the number 1 tight end coming off the board. He'll definitely be a first rounder. With the way the NFL has put an emphasis on these athletic tight ends that can create mismatches, better than Laporta, I'm telling you right now, than when he came out of Iowa, but no one saw what Laporta was going to do. This kid is a Kincaid-type athlete that's going to make a huge impact, whoever drafts him.
Yeah, I had him as the best route running tight end in the class right now. Obviously, the huge catch radius because he's so long with the ability to run over guys and run through guys. I had him inside the top 20 in my top 50 big board sneak peek there. You okay with that?
Yeah, I think he'd be higher, but when I looked at your big board, oh my God, I was like, well, that guy got to go higher. That guy, and then, this guy got to go lower. I was confused. I could have picked 40 of the 50 on moving them around to get them in the correct order.
You know what's fun, though, this year that you don't know about, and I'll reveal live to our television audience and listeners? Rick's going to do a mock draft and a big board this year. He may not know it, but he's going to do it. So you get to make your own cases, Rick, and we can make fun of you. All right, let's talk about one more guy here quickly before we get on break. Let's go with Denzel Burke, the cornerback out of Ohio State. I thought, and I think you would agree, better in 23 than 2022. He came back to school. Physical corner. He loves man coverage, and I think he brings those things this year, there's a chance he'll find his way into the first round pretty easily, right?
Yeah, I watched the 22 tape on him, and I was like, why the heck am I watching this dude? He was so inconsistent with his technique, so inconsistent with his ability to support the run. A selective tackler, if I can put it nicely, in the way he came up on the edge. But then all of a sudden, last year, you saw what you saw when he was a freshman. This guy is extremely athletic. I think he can play man coverage. I think he's going to excel in man coverage. He can mirror receivers. He can do everything you want a corner to do. I think he's gotten better and more consistent in zone coverage. And the one thing that I really liked, he became more aggressive, closing and tackling and then run support. So I think this is another kid that everybody was talking about as a freshman. This guy is the next Deion Sanders. And then he went, for whatever reason, in the tank. But I love the way he went through the adversity, rebounded, had a really good year last year, and I think he's going to have another great year this year.
How did he take the instruction from Rick, giving him the cold hard truth? Was he good with it?
Yeah, it's Terrion Arnold. It's dude.
Oh, okay. Well, that's high praise.
On tape. Yeah,
that's high praise.
I think this kid has the right attitude and the right mentality, and I think he's going to want a point to prove, and especially in the Big Ten. And you have a corner up at Michigan, apparently number one on your board. I think he's going to want to prove that he's better than him. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out. But I know he's going to have the drive to say, hey, I'm just as good or better than that guy with that team up north, as we usually say in Ohio. We can't recognize that it's Michigan.
Ohio native Rick Spielman giving us what we call a teaser. All right, when we come back, I'll tell you about the 5 college players I can't wait to see, including Rick, an FCS standout from arguably the best academic institution in the country. Right after this.
God.
Welcome back to With the First Pick here on CBS Sports Network. All right, Rick, let's take a look at the 5 college players I'm excited to see this season. I'll read through the list for our audio listeners, and then I'll get your thoughts on them because I know you're going to love every single last one of them. All right. No surprise here. You teased it earlier. Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. Travis Hunter, athlete out of Colorado. We can talk about where we like him best. Tedroy McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. He is as tall as the day is long. Cam Ward, the quarterback. Now at the U, was at Washington State, Incarnate Word before that. And then Charles Grant, offensive tackle, college of William Mary. Yes, sir. All right, let's start at the top. We'll just start with Will Johnson because you mentioned he's number 1 on my big board. Cornerback's never been drafted first overall, so we can talk about that at some point. But 6'2", 200 pounds, big, strong, playmaker. And when you talk to scouts, one of the issues was that he wasn't targeted a lot because he's so dangerous, so you don't have a lot to go on. But what you do have to go on, Rick, is mouth-watering. Maybe not in the Mason Graham mouth-watering way, but certainly top 5 sort of way. Do you think with that? You agree with that?
Yeah, no, I think he's a top 5 talent, top 10 for sure. The fun matchup last year for me to watch was Marvin Harrison Jr. and him. He stepped in front, made that big-time interceptions on a slant route, but Marvin Harrison also won a few battles on him as well. So, yeah, no, he's, to me, the top corner right now heading in. I'm going to agree with you. I don't think he should be number 1 on your board. I totally disagree with that. But that's your prerogative this time of year, and no one really cares. We'll eventually get it all figured out and fixed the closer we get to the draft. But I do like his talent. Reminded me a little bit of Christian Gonzalez. Was drafted up in New England with that length and that athleticism, and he has playmaking ability with the ball in the air. So, yeah, I think this is, to me, one of the strongest corner classes that I can remember in a long time.
Yeah, I was talking to another scout about him, and he liked my Patrick Surtain, the second comp. He said, well, that's an obvious one. And I mentioned your Christian Gonzalez comp, and he said, you know what? Christian actually moved a little better short area quickness-wise, he thought, than Will did. And the difference, he said, is that when teams talk to Christian, they had a hard time reading him. There's no confusion about who Will Johnson is. And one of the comparisons I heard in terms of the mentality of how he approaches the game is Devin Witherspoon. I don't think he's as crazy as Devin Witherspoon throwing his body around, but he's closer to that some teams think anyway, than maybe what Christian Gonzalez did during the interviews. Now, Christian had a great rookie season before he got hurt, so I'm not going to question the player he is, because he proved himself to be pretty good. Let's talk about Travis Hunter, because he's the guy we talked about in summer scouting. Our buddy Mike Renner liked him more as a wide receiver in terms of getting paid. I think he's better as a cornerback now. There's really no comp for him. I know you struggle with a comp as well. I thought in terms of his length, and I know you're going to be hemming and hawing. Thank God there's a graphic here. He's a miniaturized version of Joey Porter, but he moves better short area quickness-wise. But where are you playing him? And what are the conversations you're having about how you're going to figure out what's best for him if you're an NFL team, Rick?
Yeah, no, watching this kid, watching him on the offense and defensive side of the ball, and being able to go out to these training camps and talking to all these GMs I've been able to do over the last couple of weeks, everybody that I talk to has a different opinion on him. Some think he's a corner, others think he's a receiver. So if they're right now at this point, and again, it's early in the process, don't know. And right now it's 50-50 on the GMs I talked to on what they thought he was. So I think that'll get vetted out as we go through the season. You can go back and I talked about it in one of our previous podcasts, the Stanford game. Well, he gave up 240 yards in receptions, but then he also cut 240. So it was a net zero game for him. So I don't know how to grade him. But he is such a unique athlete. And as a DB, there's no question he's going to be a man cover guy. I think he can play zone. I think he has a little Dion in him, though, when it comes to run support. There's a few times it's like, I'm going to make a business decision here. So,
Rick,
but I'm not saying he's
tired,
not a tough kid. Well, when you play 180 snaps a game, right, you're probably going to get a little exhausted by this. Is exhausting for me. Like the end of this podcast every week, it's exhausting. You're just sitting there. So I can imagine what he's going through playing 180 snaps a game because of the durability and the everything that I have to go through on this podcast with you. The corrections I have to make, it's just mentally exhausting.
And we are praying for you. So hopefully you'll pull through it. We appreciate your
I'm doing the Lord's work.
Hey, let's talk about Teteroa McMillan, the wide receiver out of Arizona. 6'5". I don't know if he weighs 200 pounds or not. He probably weighs a little bit over that. I have to double check. But he moves like he's a slot receiver. His lateral movement skills, his short area quickness movement skills, and obviously he's a huge target down the field. And I was talking to a West Coast scout that said he thinks he has a chance to be better than Drake London. He thinks he's already better at the catch point and some of the things that Drake did coming out of USC. Where are you on that? He's my wide receiver one as we sit here.
I think that, because I think I made my comparison to Drake London / someone else. Maybe it was you, Michael Pittman type. Yeah. But I think this kid is faster than both of those guys. I think this guy's a little bit better athlete getting into and out of his cuts. And the large catching radius, it's unique. And those other two players had large catching radiuses as well, but this kid has the speed to go along with it. I think he'll time faster than Drake and Michael Pittman. So I would agree with that assessment.
Oh, all right. We're making progress, making your life easier there. And I love this graphic of the U of A wide receivers. Dennis Northcutt, Bobby Wade. Shout out to those guys in Tucson. All right. I'm going to get to Charles Grant first, just in case we run out of time, because we'll talk about Cam Ward a little bit. The offensive tackle out of William Mary. Before we get going, do you know any famous other people that went to William Mary that you have your eye on?
Yeah, Bill and Mary. Yeah, there were a couple. I think that my co-host here went to Bill and Mary, didn't you?
Yes, sir. There you go. That's what I was looking for. I thought you were going to say Mike Tomlin or Sean McDermott. So thank you for that. So Charles Grant, worth noting, scouts know about him. They've known about him for a while. He was very sought after in the transfer portal, stayed put at William Mary. Coach Mike London there has done a fantastic job. And Rick, you haven't watched him yet, but I cannot wait for you to watch him because he is one of the best athletes along the offensive line of this country. Long arm, stout at the point of attack, can move defensive ends out of the gaps. And I'll just ask you this, and the comp that Coach Mike London made was to Brickashaw Ferguson, who was a first-round pick out of UVA back in the day. So if he's in anything close to that, he'll be a first-round talent. I think he's going to be a top 75 guy for sure right now, and I can't wait to see him move up. But I want to ask you, when you're looking at offensive linemen in particular, at the FCS level, how do you figure out how they're going to adjust to big-time NFL football once they arrive?
Yeah, the biggest thing is if they have the measurements and they have the athletic skill set to do it, the other stuff can be developed. I think we're guys that come from the smaller level or FBS level. is when they go down to the Senior Bowl and guys can make a huge up. We saw Quinyon Mitchell last year, right? Toledo,
Yep.
Mac, smaller school. All of a sudden he goes down there to Senior Bowl and is the best corner down there. Guess what? Bam. Guess where he goes in the first round. So I
Bam.
think the same thing. Bam. So I think the same thing with these younger or these guys that are coming from smaller schools. That's what's so great about the East-West game. That's what's so great about the Senior Bowl is that when they can line up against the top seniors or whatever players are down there, the tops of the top, and can hold up. And you can say, I can correct his footwork. I can correct his hand placement. I can't correct and teach his length, his athleticism, and everything that comes with him. So I think they make the biggest jump, and where they start, they're on everybody's radar after the season, and then they become a priority during the pre-draft process. And that starts at the All-Star games.
Quinn Miners made himself some money down at the Senior Bowl. We saw Trevor Penning as a first-round pick. He struggled now in New Orleans, but that didn't mean he didn't help himself down there. And quickly, I'll just mention Cam Ward. The comp for him is tough, but when we watch him, we've talked about him in the fall and over the summer, and when you talk to scouts, and I've heard a couple people say this, at Washington State, he was an incredible leader. At the U already, he's taking leadership very seriously. He's a quiet, soft-spoken guy, but when he says something, people listen. Do you think he has a chance to make his way into the first round? Because I love Cam.
I love his athleticism, his off-schedule playmaking ability. I think he needs to be more consistent in the pocket and rely not as much on his athleticism, and just want to make sure that he is a athletic quarterback, not just a athlete trying to play quarterback, if that makes sense. And I think that going down to the U was a huge move for him, and I think we'll see who he truly is. But this quarterback class, and we'll talk about it, little tease coming up. I don't know if he'll move himself up in the first round, but if he has a big year, who knows? Because quarterbacks get pushed up all the time.
All right. When we come back, I'm going to talk about my top 50 big board. Thanks for the tease, Rick, which includes a whopping 8 quarterbacks right after this.
8?
Welcome back to With the First Pick here on CBS Sports Network. All right, Rick, so I published my top 50 big board on CBSSports.com last week. You can check that out there. But first up, let's talk about this quarterback class here. Back in the spring, we had 6 quarterbacks go in the first 12 picks. 11 were drafted in totality in the 2024 class. Let me read you the guys for our audio listeners who I have in my top 50, and then we can get into it here. Carson Beck's at number 6 out of Georgia. You see it here. Shedeur Sanders out of Colorado. Then Quinn Ewers out of Texas. We talked about Cam Ward out of the U. Connor Wegman, who you had on your list out of A&M. Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Drew Aller out of Penn State. And then finally Garrett Nussmeier sneaks in at 48 out of LSU. All right, so let's start here, Rick. How does this year's quarterback crop compare to the 2024 class?
Yeah, I would say not nearly as deep. And I don't know. I don't see a Caleb Williams here. I don't see. There is a guy compared to a Drake May. But I don't see the same type of, and it would be interesting to see, Ryan, how many quarterbacks we thought were first rounders last year at this time. Did we think Bo Nix was? Did we think Michael Penix Jr. was? Did we think Jaden Daniels was? So we can almost say the same thing. Right now, it doesn't look as strong. Maybe 3 of those guys are for sure first rounders, probably 2 for sure. You know, Ewers and Beck and Sanders. So just say those 3. But everybody else, you don't know. Which guy is going to be the next Jaden Daniels? Which guy is going to be the next Joe Burrow? But if you would have told me back last year at this time that there were going to be 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12 picks of last year's draft, I would have sold you my house down here, even though it didn't have any windows or doors after the hurricane. You would have bought it. So who knows? I say it's not as strong right now, but we'll see what happens as the season progresses.
And 11 months ago, back in late September, when the Colorado Buffaloes were 3-0, you and I both agreed that Shedeur Sanders was QB3 in a class that included Caleb Williams and Drake May, because Jaden Daniels was off to a strong start, but he was a day 3 guy coming into this season, just like Joe Burrow was a day 3 guy coming into his final year at LSU. And those 2 names you mentioned bring me to this. who is your Joe Burrow / Jaden Daniels out of nowhere candidate, maybe a day 3 guy now, maybe a little lower, a little higher, to make that surge up the draft boards by the time we get to April?
Are you talking about this year?
Yeah, this year's quarterbacks class. Who's your Jaden Daniels?
Okay. Well, okay. I'm going to be the smart man or the betting man. So I can go either way on this. I think the Texas A&M kid, Wigman, has a chance. I know he's on your top, but you don't know. I don't know if you have him right at the borderline, first, more likely second rounder. I think that if he has a good year, maybe he shoots into the top 10, which would be a pretty good jump. But how can you go with the track record right now at LSU? Joe Burrow, God, he's a third or fourth rounder. Bam, first pick in the draft the next year. Jaden Daniels, whoa, third or fourth rounder. Bam, second pick and overall pick in the draft this year. Who's coming up next down the pipe? Nussmeier, and way he looked in that bowl game last year and the command he had on that offense. Not the athlete that Jaden Daniels is, but a really good thrower. Garrett Nussmeier may be that next LSU quarterback that comes from the Saturday pick all the way up into the first round.
There is a, if not media-wise, but certainly among scouts and people who do this sort of thing, there's a lot of buzz about Garrett Nussmeier. We know who his dad is. And just a sneak peek, Rick, next week we're going to be talking to Cooper Patagna to 247. He loves Garrett Nussmeier. We're talking to Jim Nagy, the head of the Shrine Bowl. I'm interested to hear what he thinks about this quarterback class. And then Eric Galko will get on here as well at a Shrine Bowl. And they all know about these players. So we'll get more in-depth insights into these quarterbacks. But Garrett Nussmeier is a name that our buddy Bud Elliott over at the Cover 3 podcast got onto us back after the last draft. And you're a huge fan, probably a bigger fan than me. The guy I'm going to go with, and we talked about in the last segment, and you talked about reasons, things he needs to do in order to put himself in the first round conversation, is Cam Ward. I want to see if he can put it all together at the U. Let me ask you this about Cam Ward, just in general terms. There were some issues about Mario Cristobal. What are you laughing at? And Mario Cristobal not getting the most out of Justin Herbert. Any concerns about that at the U?
I don't know. I think they'll do a good job. It's just, I can feel it, Ryan. This is your Spencer Rattler. I can already get the sense that this is the guy that you're going to be waving the flag for all the way through this draft process. So I think that he is an upgrade over what they've had down there. Van Dyke, I thought Van Dyke won the starting job, or I thought I read where he won a starting job up at Wisconsin when he entered the transfer portal. So I think this kid can bring some spark down there to the Miami Hurricanes. The one thing that has held them back, I think, has been their quarterback play. So this kid is going to be an exciting playmaker for him, and it may elevate the Hurricanes to the next level. But boy, every time we get on this podcast and we talk about the quarterbacks, it's Cam Ward this, Cam Ward that, Cam Ward this. This is Spencer Rattler reincarnated, and I know when we get to the combine, oh, Rick, you didn't like me at all. Ryan, thank you for the support.
Yeah, that was one of the highlights of my 2024 draft season for sure. All right, we have plenty of time to talk about the quarterbacks, but you mentioned it earlier, Rick. Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan, is my number one player. Mike Renner, our buddy, had him as well as his number one. Fun fact, a cornerback has never been taken number one overall. In fact, the highest a cornerback has been drafted is number 3. It's happened 3 times. Derek Stingley in 2022, junior. Jeff Okudah in 2020, then Sean Springs, 1997. All right. So you don't have to tell me how you feel about Will Johnson. We know you like him. But who is your number one player on the Rick Spielman big board as we sit here in August?
I would say the player I love the most would be Mr. Michigan himself.
Mason Graham?
Yep.
So you fell in love with him at the Delta Club.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's like, I just think he's the most dominant player at his position right now. But I also am a realist that if Beck, the quarterback down in Georgia, continues to improve the way he's shown last year, I mean, this kid is big. He has enough arm talent. He was better with his processing as the season progressed. He's going to have talent all around him again this year. It's the University of Georgia. But I think that he has potential to be the number one overall pick if he can build off of what he was able to do last year. And how do you not think if one of these quarterbacks get up there at the top, and someone needs a quarterback, they're going to take him. It's just the premier for the position.
Yeah, I think you're onto something. They took 6 in the first 12 picks last year. You might be onto something there, Rick. All right.
Yeah, I think I've got a theory.
We're gonna think about Rick's theory in the break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation about my top 50 big board right after this. Welcome back to With the First Pick here on CBS Sports Network. All right, Rick, in the time we have remaining, a few minutes here, let me ask some questions about my top 50 big board, and you can tell me your thoughts, because I always am interested in what you think. Give me a player. Oh, what are you going to say? Go ahead. What's your joke?
Well, I appreciate the interest in what I think, and it's an honor for me to contribute to this top 50 big board that you do have. I take pride in it.
All right. Here we go. Which player on my top 50 big board is too low?
I'm going to say, and some of the buzz I'm hearing out there is Emory Jones. Now, I know you have him down there at 29, the right tackle out at LSU, but some of the buzz early, and this is what's so great about the draft and so much we can talk about, some of them have him already ahead of Will Campbell. And Will Campbell, you have 7 on your list. A lot of people think this guy could play left tackle, right tackle, can play guard, but this kid's going to be a huge climber, and he's too low on your board right now.
Thank you. I like that a lot. I appreciate that, and that's why this is fun. All right, which player do I have too high on my list?
I love the effort and the energy that this kid plays with. I just
I thought you were talking about me. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, same thing. You guys are about the same size. So I went with Howard Cross. You had him right down there. I think, is he number 50 for you? Or right there? Plays like
right at number 5
as hard as any kid will play. And the whole thing will be, is he 300 pounds? Is he 255 pounds? I can't get a verification either way. But you love the way he plays the game, but it's hard to draft a defensive tackle that high that's only 250 pounds. So, but if he's bigger, I could maybe justify that.
All right. We have a couple minutes here. Who's on this list that you wanted to see on this list?
Oh, you ready for this one? And I don't even know if you know this one. And you pulled out the Bill and Mary offensive tackle on me out of the left field. I was not prepared for that. But I'm going to go with Josh Connerly Jr., the left tackle out at Oregon. They have 2 very good tackles out there. Cornelius is on the other side. This kid is long. He's athletic. He needs to get stronger, but he plays with some grit and toughness, and these guys have a tendency to rise. Not as big as a Patrick Paul, maybe a little bit more athletic than a Patrick Paul who went in the 2nd round to Miami out of Houston last year. So I think this kid is going to be one of those guys that may creep into the 1st round if he continues to grow and get stronger as he goes through this season. Put him on your list. He's going to be in your top 50.
All right. Before we get out of here, quickly, I just need a one-word answer. How many quarterbacks did draft in the 1st round?
Today, 3.
Okay, 3. There we go. All right, look, that'll do it for us here at With the First Pick on CBS Sports Network. Thanks as always to my guy Rick. Remember, check out With the First Pick wherever you get your podcast. Football's almost back, Rick. Thanks for joining us.